glad you're here on this beautiful day. I'm glad it's not raining anymore. But this is a great step forward. As you know from observations by business leaders that come from around the world to invest in the best place in the country to invest, they always comment on the strength and the uniqueness of our people. It's always about the people. And every one of them that I have dealt with has said that at one time or another. They talk about taxes and this and that, and of course the infrastructure is very important, roads, all of those sorts, but it always ends up that the decision hinges on the strength and talents of our people. So we are producing good people, but for these young ones particularly, who are subject to so much danger, if this state and good citizens don't step up to see that they are protected, they will never get that opportunity. So we have treasures growing among us every day, and in all shapes, sizes, colors, religions, everything. But they are different from in other places. Other states have great people too, but right now, the world seems to have discovered our place that we call South Carolina, that is recognized around the world now is a model of conservation, preservation, and commerce. All of those things go together, and that's one of the things that helps make us so great. So there's been a lot of work done here to protect, particularly the young people in our state, and particularly the children, and those that have been involved in this effort over a long period of time are here, and they will speak to you and answer your questions. I ask Lee Hewitt, Representative Lee Hewitt, to start off. Go ahead.
Thank you, Governor. First, before I start talking about the child luring portion of the bill, I just want to offer my thoughts and prayers to those that are in South Carolina that are going through some serious flooding right now in the low country with all the rain and Tropical Storm Debbie, and so thoughts and prayers with them. Congressman Mason and I were just talking. Back in 2019, we first filed a bill for child luring. We had an instance in Mount Pleasant where someone was driving through a neighborhood trying to get children, trying to get them to go in their vans by trying to get them to pet a dog. And I mean, it's just as simple. Who doesn't like a dog? Who wants, children want to pet a dog? Well, thank goodness the children knew that was wrong, and they reached out to their parents. The parents called the police came, talked to the man. Unfortunately, they couldn't charge the man with anything until he shut the door, because it was not against the law to have a child pet a dog. It's only against the law once they shut that door. Well, we all know that that's too late. That child is gone. And so it became very, very important that we do that. Move forward a couple years, there was another incident in Mount Pleasant where a similar thing happened, but it was taking a child trying to get him to go fishing with them. That's just not good. Children want to do that. So thank goodness the children knew not to do that. So every year we've been filing this bill. Thank goodness we were able to finally get it across the finish line this year, thanks to my representatives, Gary Brewer, Chris Murphy, and Robbie Robbins, and so I want to thank them. Attorney General, thank you. Your office really stepped up and helped get it across. Senator Shealy, thank you. Y'all helped tremendously too. So I do want, a couple of the parents are here this morning. They reached out and we got 17,000 signatures on change.org. A big shout out to y'all for doing what y'all did on that. And I want to thank y'all for that. But anyway, Governor, thank you for having us here today. Thank you for signing the bill. And we look forward to, hopefully ensuring that we protect our children, because they are our most valuable commodity. So thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Hewitt. It's been a long, tough road to get to this moment. I first pre-filed the original Safe Harbor bill nearly 6 years ago in December of 2018. Along with the rest of the Children's Committee members, we pushed for this because of what we saw as the gross mistreatment of children who are victims of trafficking. Since then, I refiled it 2 more times, getting it passed in the Senate in 2022. The first time, and finally, as you can all see here today, having it signed into law this year. The idea for this important step forward actually came out of the Children's Committee public hearings that we hold around South Carolina each fall. We will once again be on the road in the months ahead, traveling the state to hear what issues are most important to parents, teachers, researchers, experts, and community advocates. The work of this committee is important and has brought real issues facing children and families to the forefront of our legislative agenda. And what we have heard came through loud and clear. Children who are victims of trafficking should not be convicted of crimes related to being trafficked. It is as simple as that. These children have no agency, no ability to protect themselves, and certainly no ability to advocate for their own safety and well-being. Protecting them means not just from criminals, but from injustice as well. These children need our help, they need our love, and they need a way to restart their lives after what will no doubt be some of the most traumatic and awful circumstances any of us can imagine. But we didn't stop there. We also heard from many of the same experts and advocates for other pieces of this historic act that found their way into this bill. Now, I'm not normally one who likes to have things tacked onto my legislation like a Christmas tree. But in this case, each and every one will help protect victims and punish perpetrators. And quite frankly, it would not have been possible without the hard work, expert guidance, and incredible intellect of our late Judicial Chief of Staff, Andy Fiffick. Rest in peace. The first piece I want to highlight is the confidentiality protections for victims and their advocates. I have worked hard for several years with domestic violence experts and the Attorney General's office to get this right. Victims and their advocates should not fear their abusers finding them and punishing them for speaking out. This is an important step forward to protecting the innocent and making it easier for them to come forward. The final two pieces of this legislative masterpiece were the ones that, while I did not have as much direct involvement with them from the beginning, are nevertheless critical to our justice system, giving law enforcement and prosecutors the tools they need to protect our state. Together, each part of this act will work to build a stronger body of armor for children and victims of crime in South Carolina. But the work is not done. In fact, there is still a lot left to do, from protecting our citizens from intimate partner violence to making sure that every child is fed in school. We must continue to make progress to help those who need it most. I may not be in the Senate next year, but I will never stop fighting for those who have no voice for themselves. My challenge to each of you here today is to never rest while one child is in harm's way. Never sit back while a woman is still being abused. Never wait for someone else to do what needs to be done, because somewhere, someone needs our help, needs our advocacy, needs our compassion. It might just save their life. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Congressman Nancy Mace.
Good afternoon, and as Governor Henry McMaster said in his opening remarks today, the strength of South Carolina rests in her people. So I first want to give a shout out to the moms who are here this afternoon. We have moms from Mount Pleasant, we have moms from Logoff, South Carolina. Please give a warm welcome to all the moms who traveled up here to Columbia, took the day off, took a day away from their kids to be here for this very important moment for the state of South Carolina. I'm here today with a message, and the message is that conservatives care about women, conservatives care about our children. And in October of 2018, I was a freshman state house member here in South Carolina's legislature. And I got a phone call from a mom in Mount Pleasant, and her name was Katie Shields. Katie is here today. Katie wanted to be sure that I was aware of an incident that happened in Mount Pleasant where a man with a van had promised a kid some bubble gum in a bucket. And in that same time frame, as Lee Hewitt mentioned earlier, there was another incident, again in Mount Pleasant, where a man in a car tried to lure a child into his vehicle with the promise of petting a puppy. What I didn't know at the time is that with kidnapping, it's not until you shut the door in the vehicle, shut the door in a dwelling or a home, that it becomes a crime. So the moment a kid was at a playground or at a park, that time between the playground and the park and the car, it wasn't illegal to attempt to lure that child away. So I got that frantic phone call, and I heard the pleas for help. But so too did Lee Hewitt. Lee picked up the call and drafted a bill and filed it in January of 2019, the child luring bill. And he has worked and he has sweated it out, painfully sometimes, when all of these moms across the state blew his phone up, his email, and everybody up here heard from moms across South Carolina. The moms got it done, but with Lee's leadership. And it could not happen without you, Lee, and I am grateful to have been a partner with you. This is one of the first bills I co-sponsored with Lee and others on the child luring bill. And I want to thank the governor today for his leadership, not just on this bill, the child luring bill, making it illegal to lure a kid away like this, but when I was in the state legislature, Governor, you signed my prison reform bill for women in South Carolina. You signed a bill just 2 years ago, Senator Tom Davis out of Beaufort, helping women get access to birth control in South Carolina from their pharmacies. Conservatives care about women, we care about kids, and we care about getting the job done. And that is what everyone up here today is doing. And I want to thank all of our members of the legislature here today and the Attorney General, the Lieutenant Governor, Governor McMaster. We could not do this without you. We praise you and we thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Mace. It is great to be here today. First off, before I get into my remarks, these events are amazing, but they start off with a lot of people working. They don't work for credit. They certainly don't do it for the pay. But as I'm looking out here in the audience, I'm seeing members of my staff. Obviously, my Chief Deputy, Jeff Young, Don Zelinka, who's been in the Attorney General's office for nearly 5 decades. You got B.J. Nelson, Sarah Barber's here. I see Veronica Swain-Coons. So many other people who are out there. Laura Hudson, my goodness, how can you not remember Laura Hudson's name? And of course, along the way, when you're trying to advocate for reforms to our criminal justice laws to make South Carolina safer and a better place to live, work, and raise a family, you can go to the legislature and you have leaders like Representative Hewitt and Senator Shealy who have been super champions. And you have other legislators up here, others who couldn't be here today, like Chris Murphy, who get out there. But I'll tell you where real reform begins. It begins on the streets, in the neighborhoods, in the communities, in the schools. It begins with 17,000 angry moms. I love it, seeing parents get involved. Thank you, Katie and Brittany, who are here today. Without the moms, without the dads, without the families, really raising awareness and giving fire to this thing, some of these reforms would never see the light of day. So I'm incredible, as the Attorney General, I'm incredibly grateful to the families who really get all involved. And then, of course, there's the staff. I talked about my staff, and Senator Shealy, I can't thank you enough for mentioning Andy Fiffick, who's no longer with us, but the Chief of Staff to the Senate Judiciary and all the Senate staff and the House staff, legislators and governors and attorney generals and congresspeople. We get a lot of credit, but the staff, that is where the elbow grease, that is where it really happens. And for those who cannot be here today, thank you. Thank you for what you do to make this state safer and better. Some of the issues that were in this basket of reforms in the bill are very important to me. Every year, my staff and I, when I say staff, all the senior staff in the Attorney General's office, we look backwards to see what we did the previous year, and we look forwards to see what we want to accomplish in the next year. And out of these meetings is born reforms and ideas. Some of these originate with us. Some of these we jump onto when it's brought to our attention. And so, for instance, making it safer in South Carolina to protect victims of human trafficking, people who've been victims of human trafficking, making it easier to broaden the pathway for them to expunge those crimes that they may have been committed because they were entangled in a human trafficking ring. for instance, a child or a victim selling marijuana or committing some other crime, because they were a victim of a human trafficking ring, should be able to have an easier pathway to expunging that record. Minor victims of human trafficking need to have a broadened view of safe harbor. So once they are charged and they get to trial, we need to prevent those crimes, those young people, those minor victims of human trafficking, from even being prosecuted for crimes. And that is why I'm so grateful that we broaden the aperture of safe harbor to protect minor victims of human trafficking. Another thing that was in here, and I want to give some credit to you, Senator Shealy, is the confidentiality, the victims' confidentiality program that South Carolina created. It's an address confidentiality program that we have created that will protect victims from having their official correspondence discovered by the defendant in the case that made them a victim to begin with, and that program is being implemented because of the signing of this legislation. We are the 49th state to do this, I am told, so we're not the last. We should have been earlier, but at least it's getting done. Thank you, Governor, for signing it. Another thing, a lot of people aren't talking about this, but there's a flaw in how our laws on kidnapping and murder were written, so that if someone were charged with murder and kidnapping, those two sentences couldn't run together. So if a judge sentenced someone to murder to 30 years, they couldn't also sentence them to the kidnapping based on the technical drafting of how the law was written. And so we changed that writing so that if someone were to be convicted of murder and sentenced to 30 years, they could also be sentenced to kidnapping. And before, you couldn't do that. So if the murder is thrown out on appeal, you at least still have that kidnapping charge in place. That couldn't happen before, but because of the members of my team, Melody Brown, I see her hiding behind the camera, she brought that to our attention, and Don Zelinka, and we worked with the staff in the House and Senate. We worked with the leaders standing up here today, and I thank them. I thank all of us. Thank you, moms. Appreciate you for making this happen. Again, the luring of a minor bill, that wouldn't have happened but for the participation of citizens of this state. And so, Governor, I want to thank you finally for your leadership. Again, your signature is what made this thing a reality at the end of the day, and thank you so much. I look to you for a lot of leadership because you had my job before I did, and I know you can appreciate what it means to prosecutors and law enforcement out there who are trying to protect these families. So thank you again for signing this law. And I will now be followed by our governor, Henry McMaster.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Just to wrap up right quick, our First Lady, your First Lady, my first and my favorite wife is here, Peggy. She and Catherine Moorhead and others have been working on human trafficking for a lot of years. But there are a lot of groups. I remember Laura Hudson was involved with groups way back in the 80s, and she's been fighting these battles a long time, so made a lot of progress. Just a couple of pictures to get for you. Why does this happen? Imagine a young child after school waiting on somebody come pick him up, waiting on a ride. And say they're how old, pick your child. And one of the lures is called the police officer lure. They pull up in a dark car. It looks like could be a police car. A man will get out with a suit on, maybe have some sort of badge, and say to this child, "Are you," whatever he found out the child's name is, "Your mama, your brother is in jail. We've got some problems. I was asked to come pick you up. Your mom, somebody's in jail." Another one is the puppy lure, which you heard of. Someone will pull up and say, "Are you so and so?" Yes, I am. Say, "Well, I was told that you like puppies, and we have a litter at the house, and we've given away 3, but we have 1 left. And I've told you if you can come with me, I'll give you that puppy, and I'll bring you right back in, and you can get picked up by your mama." Imagine a little child. And the other one is the ambulance lure. Somebody's been in a wreck, your mama, your daddy, somebody, your grandmama. And I was told to come, if you are, whatever the name, told to come pick you up and take you to the hospital. Let's go. If you're a child, you really have no defense to that kind of thing. You haven't been on earth long enough to know how bad that is or how much evil exists. So telling the child don't take candy from a stranger or don't get in the car with a stranger is a good lesson. But it takes more than that because they are not able to understand what they're facing. So we have to go from another angle, and that is letting those that would do these things know that not only does South Carolina have excellent law enforcement, but now we have one more strong tool to use to see that they are accountable for their actions. And if that deterrent is strong and clear enough, then it will have a deterrent effect. And so my congratulations and thanks to all of those who've been mentioned that worked so hard for so long to get this done. We got a lot more to do, but this is a great step forward. If we can keep these young people safe and get them educated and have them good food to eat, there's no telling where our state will be able to go. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions for anyone? We got a lot of answers up here.
I don't have the number of cases I could pull out of the air right now. I can get that number for you. Obviously, we have our human trafficking report that has it broken down by how many victims. But it is something that our team says is a real issue. When you have minors who are getting sucked into a life of trafficking, they have been victimized. And when you're in the life of trafficking, a lot of that involves committing other types of crimes, property crimes, drug crimes. You're selling, you're dealing, you're doing the drugs. You get caught up. You're charged for prostitution, that whole class of misdemeanors and other types of crimes. We want to make sure that people have the opportunity to have those expunged from those who've already been charged and convicted in the past. And moving forward, we want to be able to protect minor victims of human trafficking from having those even being charged or prosecuted in a court of law. So that's what's important to our team on behalf of 46 sheriffs, 16 solicitors, and the Human Trafficking Task Force. That's what we wanted and needed. I omitted one staffer. I want to say their name since I'm back up here, and that's Matt Gates. He's always lurking in the shadows. I can never see him, but he really was instrumental in all of this. So thank you, Matt.
Another question? Yes, sir. Say that a little louder, please. One thing I'd ask you to remember that a lot of states looking at South Carolina doing things and say, well, why didn't we do that a long time ago? This is just one where we haven't moved quickly enough.
Well, I mean, as you know, sometimes lawmaking is not an easy process. In our case, when Congresswoman Mace and I first filed this, we had some good momentum with the bill and felt like we about had it across the finish line. And then COVID hit, and then we got bogged down in that. And it really wasn't until, we were able to get back in and get back into session and get back to work that we were able to get traction again. And when we did, it picked up and it went, thanks to everybody up here, the Attorney General, my fellow senators and House members and Chairman Weston Newton with the Judiciary. So, I mean, it's a process, but those were our main obstacles. It wasn't that people didn't see the need. I mean, anytime you're working with attorneys in statute, that's always interesting, but we were able to get it to move forward. And so, there was a lot of impediments, but it wasn't because people didn't realize the importance of it.
Another question?
Well, 10 years ago, we didn't have a human trafficking law. 10, 12 years ago, we didn't have a human trafficking law. So it's an evolution. This is a thing that is evolving over time. You don't know what you don't know until you learn about it. And so over the years, as our task force, working with our regional task force, working with all of our trade association groups, South Carolina Law Enforcement Officers Association, the Sheriff's Association, I think they're represented here today. We learn from them. We learn from the Solicitors Association. Hey, these are issues that, might be helpful in expunging records of minor victims of human trafficking. And also, we're trying to put protections in place going forward. The law enforcement and the prosecution community brought this to our attention, as well as our members of the Human Trafficking Task Force. You know, like I said, 10 years ago, this law didn't exist, and over the years, you just learn things as you do. You don't know what you didn't know at the time. So it's an evolution. And a year from now, 5 years from now, you know, we'll be fixing laws that are broken now that we don't yet know about or haven't been brought to our attention. So that's the best answer I have for why that happened.